Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and we're continuing on with our faction focus looking at the Dark Elves, and we're now looking at the hero options for the Dark Elves. So, as I said, we've got Warhammer The Old World. That's what this is about and for. However, we don't have the rules. So, as if you have watched the first episode, you would know that essentially we're looking at the 8th edition Army Book rules to give us an idea, an indication of how previous characters and units played, what their flavour was, and how that might influence the way they might possibly play in Warhammer The Old World, acknowledging the fact that Dark Elves are getting a legendary style list, i.e. they won't be getting updates after that list is first issued, at least during the first edition. So, without further ado, let's look at the Dark Elf hero options and how they played. So, first up in the Dark Elf heroes, we have the Sorceress. So this is the next one down from the Lord. So, similar to the Supreme Sorceress, low stats except leadership, no weapon options, and this time is a level 1 or a 2 wizard, mainly dark magic or one of the 8 basic laws, but as we said before, with that special rule of Hecate's Blessing, you do get +1 to cast dark magic, and that's nothing to sniff at because that can mean the difference between getting your spell off or not. Same in terms of the mount options as well: Dark Steed, Cold One, and Dark Pegasus. Sometimes it's nice putting them on something where they can move fast around the board, but it became much more important to protect them, and so you'd often find the Sorceress in an infantry block, and not uncommonly in a unit of Dark Shards, where she can stay back. The Dark Shards unit can also stay back. They're shooting their crossbows while she's casting the spells, and essentially protected because she's in that unit. So that would be something that could be seen quite a bit. As I say there, it's a cheap support caster, seen in most armies, so even if you didn't take a Supreme Sorceress, you'd probably take at least 2 of these Sorcerers. Some people leaned heavily onto the magic as well, took a Supreme Sorceress and a couple of basic level Sorceress as well, and again, most of the time burying them in infantry units, typically missile infantry units, like Dark Shards. So yeah, pretty much the same as your Supreme Sorceress, just a little lower down and obviously significantly cheaper in the points cost. Next up, we have the Master. So you can see that as a relatively old classic Master model there for the Dark Elves, and essentially this is your step down from your Dreadlord: medium weapon skill, ballistic initiative, and leadership. So the typical sort of stats you'd see on a Dark Elf. Again, large number of weapon options, large number of light, heavy armor, and Sea Dragon Cloak options. So pretty much the same in the Dreadlord, quite flexible as a character. The interesting thing here can also be the Battle Standard Bearer. So if you do want to take a Battle Standard in your army, the Master could do so, and then of course take a special magic banner. Lots of options again for mounts, the one exception now being you can't put a Master on a Black Dragon, which is not surprising. And again, the standard special rules that you get across the Dark Elf army. Very cheap and flexible as a combat character, much like the Dreadlord. But he can get expensive quite quickly when you start kitting him out with everything. You start giving him all different weapon options and the armor and the Dragon Cloak, and you want to put him on a mount and so on. Before you know it, he could be the cost of a basic cost of a Dreadlord or more. So it's one of those things you have to watch out for, that you don't suddenly make him too expensive, and then is he going to make his points cost back? And that's always the question when you're putting these characters together: is he going to make that points back? Is he going to kill that many points of the enemy army? And so you have to balance that out. Again, as a Master, you might put your Dreadlord on a Black Dragon because it's actually quite fearsome, although expensive. Whereas your Master, again, more commonly found buried in infantry units, giving those infantry units a bit more bite. So The only other place you might see him is leading a unit of Cold One Knights. That was something else I saw quite common, but rarely would I've ever seen one on a Chariot, Manticore, or Dark Steed. And that is the Dark Elf Master. Next up is the Death Hag. So you can see there, that's a relatively new sculpt of model that came out, and actually quite a nice looking one, based upon the new style of the Witch Elves. Medium weapon skill, ballistic skill, initiative, and so on, and quite low in terms of strength, toughness, and wounds. No weapon options, it just comes with 2 hand weapons, which gives you that extra attack. She can take 1 of the special Witch Elf potions. She can also be a battle standard bearer, so like the Master, she can pay the points and be a battle standard bearer. Though I have to say, if I was going to take a battle standard bearer, I'd probably prefer to put it on the Master than I would on a Death Hag. She can be mounted on a Cauldron of Blood. So that is an option if you do want to significantly buff her, and she is significantly obviously cheaper than any special characters and so on. So in terms of Hellebrand, who could also ride the Cauldron of Blood, just a Cauldron of Blood kind of on its own. So not a bad choice to put on a Cauldron of Blood. And a great thing about the Cauldron of Blood is it can join a unit. So you could actually have the Cauldron of Blood joining a unit of Witch Elves, then it gives a whole bunch of buffs to those Witch Elves. So an interesting option there. Comes with the basic Always Strikes First and Murderous Prowess and so on, but also comes with Frenzy, which is quite common to Witch Elf units, which is +1 attack, immune to psychology, but must charge the nearest unit unless a leadership test is passed, and they must pursue or overrun if lost or beaten in combat. So you don't get Frenzy anymore if you are beaten in combat, but you must pursue and overrun if you win. Just to be clear on what I'm saying there. And also poisoned attacks auto wound on 6s. So that's also something. One of the interesting bits on the Cauldron of Blood is on the Frenzy. Cauldron of Blood will make her have +2 attacks instead of just the +1. But with the quite high leadership, it does really help with holding back that Frenzy. You can always get unlucky, and that's just something you have to live with. But that +1 attack and immune to psychology can be quite important. So overall, a Witch Elf unit leader, particularly if she's on a Cauldron of Blood, that's immune to the friendly fire madness. So what that basically means is if a character joins a Witch Elf unit, there's a chance they can turn on that character. They can't do that with Death Hags. So she was quite common to be seen in Witch Elf units, giving them that extra bite, and also on Cauldrons of Blood. The issue being 2 wounds and no armor makes her a bit of a glass cannon, which is why if I was going to field her, then I'd probably be looking to put a Cauldron of Blood as her mount in the game, in a unit of Witch Elves. And then we have the Dark Elf hero, the K-Knight Assassin. Very high weapon skill, ballistic skill, initiative, and leadership. Low strength, toughness, and wounds. No surprise there. Limited weapon options. You can have hand weapons, throwing weapon, and a repeater crossbow. You can take 1 of the special assassin venoms he gets to choose from. There's 3 that are available. The basic special rules, which is good. A killer, not a leader, so he can never be a general, and units can't use his leadership. But the way he starts is he starts the game hidden, which means he can deploy hidden in an infantry unit, and he will be revealed during your move phase. So you have to write down at the beginning of the game which unit he's in, so you can't just suddenly change it at the last minute. And then during your move phase or either player's close combat phase, you can then reveal your assassin is in that unit, and then he goes in the front rank, and then he can obviously fight against that unit. Particularly good if you're looking to take on characters, immune to psychology, poisoned attacks with the auto wound on 6s. Most armies that I saw did tend to have at least one assassin out there, as much for the fun and flavour, I think, as the threat of is there an assassin hiding in the army and where is he? But much like a Death Hag, he can be a bit of a glass cannon. If you do whiff your attacks, he's probably unlikely to survive. No armour and only 2 wounds. He's quite good at killing enemy heroes, but struggles with enemy lords. And that's, the number of attacks he's got and the strength that he's doing it at can limit him. So, a 2 or 3 wound model with relatively low toughness and an average armor save, he'd be pretty good at taking those out. But as soon as you get into those tougher characters, the assassin just wasn't up to the job. Obviously, you can't equip him with magic items, but again, it's deciding actually is putting a magic item on your relatively fragile assassin a good value in points, or is it better to put that on your Dreadlord, Supreme Sorceress, or so on. And there we go. That brings us to the end of the Dark Elf hero roster. Hope you find that interesting. If you did, then and you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, though, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, please hit that subscribe button. It's totally free for you to do. It means a huge amount for me, so thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you very soon.